This is my Topo Toppers Mesa camper on my Nissan Frontier. Last year I insulated the walls in here with rigid foam insulation, but I've never done anything with the roof, the ceiling of the camper, and so I'm finally getting to that. Now this camper comes as just a shell with a bed. I've done the complete build out in this. I have a whole video series about what I've done in here, and I will put a link to that whole playlist in the description below. And yeah, for those of you who've been asking, I do still have the Mazda. Had a few little issues. I've been trying to fix some things on it, and I have a new plan. I will have some updates on this soon, but hopefully we'll get this rolling, and maybe we'll even see it on the channel one of these days. Now the roof of this camper is a solid sheet of 1/8" aluminum. These cross pieces are just like support to provide like additional rigidity, but it is one continuous sheet of aluminum. Now obviously I'm going to need to go in between these. My initial thinking was to use rigid foam insulation like I used for the walls and line it with the wallpaper like I used for the walls. I was going to use foil backed insulation so that I wouldn't experience any of that bubbling. Now this is up here in the tent. I'm going to lose heat up here no matter what. My bigger concern here is just to get rid of these metal surfaces, because when I camp in the winter and it's cold outside and it's warm and moist in here, I definitely get some condensation on the metal surfaces, especially on the ceiling. So the other thought I had was just to cover this with some indoor-outdoor carpeting. I really went back and forth on what approach I wanted to take. An advantage of using the insulation and wallpaper is that it's light colored. It would bring some light in here, whereas all of the sort of budget indoor-outdoor carpet choices that they have at my home improvement store are pretty dark in color. Now, I've been camping in this for almost 2 years with this black ceiling, so it's fine. It's been fine. I've got plenty of light in here. And I was out at the home improvement store still trying to decide which way I was going to go. I looked at the carpet, I looked at the insulation. As it turns out, they only had the insulation in 1 inch thick or thicker, whereas I was thinking to use 1/2 inch insulation for the ceiling, because these metal cross ribs are about 1/2 inch deep, and so the 1 inch insulation would sort of stick out beyond it, and I thought that might not look so tidy. The other thing is that 1 inch of insulation here consumes a considerable amount of volume, where this closes down onto my bedding here, and while these cross ribs sort of squish down into it, obviously my bedding, pushes somewhat up into that space. This is a very sleek, slim-topped camper. I can keep all of my bedding in here, including I've got an extra mattress topper, but I'm really at the limit of what I can squeeze in up here. So that sort of clinched it for me. I decided I'm going to go with the carpet in here and just use spray adhesive. I've never done that before. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've watched a few videos, and we're just going to see how it goes. So this is just some inexpensive indoor-outdoor carpeting that they sell in bulk on rolls at Jerry's here in Eugene. They probably have something similar at Home Depot's. This is about $1 a square foot. They had some that was at 67 cents a square foot, which would have brought, the cost down by about 30%. But it was sort of ribbed, it had lines in it, and I was concerned that with my luck with this kind of material, I would end up with things going just slightly at an angle, and it wouldn't look quite as tidy. All I got on hand is this silver Sharpie. I think some chalk or something would work better, but I can see that line. It might be difficult to see on the camera, but maybe that one's easier to see. Yeah, I can see well enough. And I guess we'll figure out if a knife or scissors is better to cut that with. That works reasonably well. Definitely you have to take tiny, tiny little bites. It wants to sort of bind up in there. Maybe we'll try with the knife. I don't know, it might have been done if I'd used the scissors. Well, ultimately, I'm not sure that using the knife was any faster, because I had to go through it several times, And I don't know if you can see there, this first 8 inches maybe was the scissors, and it's a really nice clean cut. And then the rest of it with the knife, I don't know if you can tell, it's straight, but it's just a little more shaggy and ragged looking. I mean, I don't think it's going to matter, but I think I may try to do the rest of the cuts with the scissors, even if it's a little tedious. Ultimately, I thought that was easier with the scissors, maybe even faster, and it's a cleaner looking cut, although it's not as perfectly straight as the razor blade, but I don't think you're going to be able to tell once it's installed. I'm using 3M77, it's what everyone talks about. I suspect that for this application, most of the decent spray adhesives that are available would be fine. So apparently what you're supposed to do, spray both surfaces and then let it sit for a few minutes to let it get tackier. You definitely shouldn't be in an enclosed space with this kind of spray adhesive. I used to have a good respirator. I'm not sure what happened to it, but I just kind of held my breath there while I did the spraying and step outside and breathe fresh air before I go back in to stick that up. That went way better than I was expecting. I traditionally really struggle with floppy material, and I just did not know how well that was gonna hold up there. But letting that sit for a couple of minutes, get tacky, it just wanted to stick right up there. I made a little bit of a mistake when I first went up there. I was off by maybe ½ an inch, but I was able to readjust, and oh, I'm stunned that I did that. I'm stunned. We'll see how well it stays. That was not too bad.
1 hour later.
Okay, just sort of wash, rinse, and repeat. Did all 3 of those panels. Those look good. And that front panel, I did get this a little bit off center, so I've got the tiniest little gap along that side where it's really super snug on that side. And I missed that until I was all the way done and pulled back out of there, and it was too late to reposition. I was kind of upside down working on it, so I didn't see that little mistake. So it's not really noticeable if you look at it like that, but I mean, I can see it, but it's still better than it was. I think it actually sounds quieter in here with this sheet of metal no longer, bouncing the sound back at me. And even if I didn't put in, an inch or ½ inch of insulation, I'm sure this is still going to add a little bit of coziness factor, because it just won't be, this aluminum, which does get really cold when it's cold outside. You can just feel the cold there. Now, I just did those as rectangles. There are these little spaces at the ends of these cross beams. I didn't want to try and cut something that would fit around those. I just knew there'd be no way I'd be that accurate. So I've cut some little patches that I'm going to fill in there. Okay, and with those little holes patched, it looks pretty seamless. I am quite pleased with how that turned out, if I do say so myself. Now, obviously, there are still these metal cross beams here, and these also definitely collect condensation when it's cold out and warm and damp in here. Now, I had an idea, which was I thought maybe a good thick layer of Plasti-Dip, which makes kind of a rubber coating, would provide enough insulative properties to keep this from collecting condensation. So I actually, before I started the carpet, I actually did some tests with the Plasti-Dip. So as I was painting that on there, I was feeling pretty skeptical that this could really make a difference. But now that it's dry, it's remarkable how much colder this aluminum feels than right there where the Plasti-Dip is. So I don't know, maybe it will help. Okay, it is a crisp October morning. It's about 7 o'clock. It's in the low 30s here in Eugene, and I have got the heater running, and I am boiling some water, and we will see if that Plasti-Dip makes any difference compared to the bare metal. Okay, it hasn't been very humid here, so it's not as blatant as sometimes it could be, but we're definitely getting a haze. You see that? It's definitely a haze of water on the metal. There's quite a bit of water on there. There. Hopefully you can see how that's pretty wet. That's quite wet. Let's see if it's any different here. Oh, it's definitely wet there too. Now, it feels less cold. It feels slightly less cold. Several degrees warmer. It definitely feels compared to the metal, but it is accumulating condensation. Well, there's definitely some improvement in the temperature of that bare metal, but it doesn't seem to be enough to prevent condensation from building up if the conditions are right. And I've definitely been in situations where it's colder than this, but the air is even more humid, camping in Western Oregon in the middle of winter, and even more condensation accumulates much more quickly. So even though I can definitely feel a temperature difference between the bare metal and what's been covered with the Plasti-Dip, I'm not convinced that it's worth masking everything off and doing Plasti-Dip, because I think there's still going to accumulate condensation. So either I live with the fact that those strips will just have to accumulate some condensation, or I come up with another solution. What do you think? So because that carpeting came in a 6-foot width at my hardware store, I had to buy 8 feet of it basically to have enough material to do the entire ceiling in there. And that was inefficient. I've got, some pretty large leftover pieces. So at $1 per square foot, that came out to $48. The spray adhesive was, I think, is around $11 or $12. I still have quite a bit of this left. I'm sure it'll come in handy for other projects. So, roughly a $50 project, depending on maybe the size of your roof, the type of carpet you end up getting. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I think it's going to make a difference. Now I just need to figure out what to do with those cross members. I think I'm going to go up and camp for a night this week. It should be pretty cold. We'll see what it looks like, and we'll see what kind of difference it makes having that carpet on the ceiling. If you have any questions about what I've done here, put them in the comments below. And also, again, if you have any ideas what you might do with those metal cross members to protect them, post that in the comments below. In the description below, I will put a link to my playlist that has the whole series of my camper build if you want to see more of what I've done here. And thank you for watching.